You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. It was hot outside today, and Brian Kelly made a point to say, listen, we are extending the amount of time we're spending outside from an hour to an hour and 15, hour and 20, and that is very intentional because of what's ahead.
Made some progress from yesterday in terms of the way we practiced, and we got a long way to go. We've got to continue to work on our conditioning level in these elements, and we'll be smart. We'll be careful with our guys, but we're going to continue to build on what we need to do to be ready for, our opener in Orlando, which I can guarantee is going to be extremely warm.
25 days away, so they're being very intentional. Let me start before I get into what we saw at practice today with what you're probably interested in, which a lot of the personnel sort of questions, sort of attendance, for lack of a better phrase. So Brian Thomas was back today. He was dressed, but he was not going through the team drills that we saw. He was there in uniform, but was not participating. Same for Josh Williams, running back who was taking the first team reps the last two on Friday. Logan Diggs was taking first team reps on Monday. Josh Williams was present, but was not participating. Same for Greg Brooks. Remember, when we were watching practice on Monday, Greg Brooks left with a trainer, did not return. He was out there today, but again, was not participating. Malik Neighbors at one point did leave with a trainer and then returned to practice. Kind of looked like he was favored. I don't want to guess what it is, but he was kind of holding his arm or his hand or his wrist. Look, I noticed at practice on Monday when they were indoors, Malik Neighbors had his right ankle taped, and then also when they were doing some contact drills for the receivers, he was kind of favoring his right hand. So I don't know what that is. It's probably nothing. He's still out there running around. But remember, Neighbors and Lacey got ejected from practice on Monday. Both were back full participant today. LaTerrence Welch left. That appeared to be heat-related. We did see him come off to the side. And he's actually kind of crouching down right by the media where we were standing. And suffice to say that sometimes when you're outside and you're sweating a lot, anyone that's played sports and you've been overheated, you have certain effects that can happen. He was trying not to hurl. I'll put it to you that way. So they did bring him to the locker room at one point. And then Kamarian Pimpton, who continues to impress, he was at one point getting his lower back worked on under tent with the trainer. They had a massage gun. They were working on his lower back. So everything that they're dealing with, it all seems so minor. I mean, the only thing that I think we could all realistically say right now that was a big deal is what's happened, whatever it is, with J.K. Johnson, who's not participating and is, got his foot wrapped and he's on a scooter. So aside from J.K. Johnson, everything else appears very minor, what's been out there. So that's some of the personnel stuff that we saw today. I'll kind of run through practice as we saw it structured. Again, keeping in mind what they've been doing is starting inside and then moving outside. We only got to see about an hour of the outside portion today. And I say only with, obviously, understanding that most reporters, if they get to see any of a college football practice, it's about 15 minutes worth of stretching. We're actually getting to see them do a lot. When we went outside today, we got to see LSU running their 2-minute offense. So it was first offense against first defense, and that's been pretty consistent. It's not running against a scout team. We're seeing good on good. So ones on ones, twos on twos, and so on. So I mentioned Armani Goodwin was taking the first team reps at running back today. At receiver, with Brian Thomas out, it was Chris Hilton in Brian Thomas's space. So the three wide receivers with the first team were Hilton, Lacey, and, of course, Malik Neighbors. So, and then your offensive line was exactly what we've talked about. Campbell, Dellinger, Turner at center, Miles Frazier at right guard, and Emory Jones at right tackle, and Mason Taylor was your starting tight end. First offense ran pretty fluidly. I think the defense did a little bit of a better job today. Andre Sam actually had a chance at an interception against Jaden Daniels. He dropped it. Kamarian Pimpton maybe made the biggest offensive play, a beautiful reception on an out route heading toward the sideline. Looked really good. Defensively, your first unit, the only change there was with Greg Brooks out. We saw Sage Ryan as the starting nickel. So the corners with the first team were Deuce Chestnut and Zy Alexander, who continued to remain with the first team. And then your linebackers were Omar Spates and Harold Perkins, as we know. And your safeties continue to be Major Burns and Andre Sam. So they're pretty – and we know the defensive line is Savion Jones at one end, Ovia Gofu at the jack, and your interior starters are Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo. So that hasn't changed at all. So first-team offense against first-team defense. It was interesting when we saw the second team go in. There were some notable changes, mostly on defense. Now, this may be just part and parcel with some of the absences and the injuries that were there, but the second-team defensive line, again, as we saw it, again, and there were guys rotating and whatnot, but it looked like, as best I could tell, your jack was Braden Swinson, the Oregon transfer. Your interior linemen that they used were Tyji Hill and Jordan Jefferson. And then the left end, the big end, was Quincy Wiggins. Your nickel was Ryan Robinson. And then we saw LaTerrence Welch and Caleb Jackson running at corners. Your linebackers were the Weeks brothers. You saw West and Weeks running at linebacker with that second unit. And the safeties were Javian Toviano and Jordan Allen. Again, that's as we saw it when they were running 2-minute. Now, that might have been a specific package that the defense was running. I'm not saying that's their base. That's just as we saw it. Also, let's see, when the second-team offense was running, it was the other freshman. It was Caleb Jackson. I'm sorry. Forgive me. When I said Caleb Jackson, it was Ashton Stamps at corner. Caleb Jackson was at running back with the second team. So the 226s, again, that's why you need a roster. So we saw Caleb Jackson and Trey Bradford as the running backs with the second team rotating in. And interestingly enough, we saw Mac Markway running as the tight end with the second team. Your receivers were 80, 82, and 33. So 80 is Greg Clayton, 82 is Kai Preon, and then 33 is the former walk-on Javen Nicholas, who is in there as well. Your second-team offensive line from left to right, I'll run through this quickly, was, as we talked about, Bo Bordelon, who continues to really impress. Kimo Macaneoli was left guard. You had Marlon Martinez at second center. Mason Lunsford, who was working on the left side last week. It was right guard today, and then continue to see Lance Hurd run as the backup at right guard. At right tackle. At second team right tackle. I decided today to spend a good amount of time watching the offensive line and defensive line when they went head up against each other, because after the 2-minute period, they went to a special teams period. The players working as returners, I mean, basically everybody was out there. It was Greg Clayton, Javen Nicholas, Noah Kane, Jalen Brown, Logan Diggs, Kyle Parker, and Trey Holly. All of them were working on returning. While that was happening, Bob Diaco was working with the guys on special teams coverage. And it was interesting, the drill they set up. Basically, the defenders there were two players on the sideline 10 yards apart. And the defender, they were running to a point. And so the offensive guy had to block the defender from getting to the dummy. And it makes sense, right? It's basically drilling, if you're a gunner, getting to your point around the defender. And Ryan Yates and Caleb Jackson both made incredible plays. Those are two freshmen who you could very well see them get their opportunity in special teams early, because both of them looked awesome in that drill. One more quick thing, as I kind of looked at the offensive line against the defensive line, they were running a drill where it was basically you had the 5 offensive linemen lined up, but it was a pass rush one-on-one. And the reason was essentially to compress the space. So you had Will Campbell going up against Savion Jones. You had Mason Smith against Garrett Dellinger. You had Charles Turner against Jacobian Guillory. We saw Miles Frazier against Mekhi Wingo. And then we saw Emory Jones against Omar Spates, oddly enough. And the offensive line was awesome. Will Campbell stonewalled Savion Jones. Mason Smith and Garrett Dellinger split 1-1. Charles Turner overwhelmed Jacoby and Guillory. I was stunned to see that. Miles Frazier and Mekhi Wingo split a pair of reps, and then Emory Jones just completely stonewalled and kind of overwhelmed Omar Spates. The other thing I'll tell you is the second unit offensive line dominated the second unit defensive line. I'm going to continue to toot this guy's horn because Bo Bordelon won his 2 reps against Quincy Wiggins effectively, and then they gave him a 3rd rep against Omar Spates, and then Spates went right past him. So as I was complimenting Bo Bordelon, then he lost that rep. The other player that was dominant was Zalance Hurd. And he got 2 reps against Deshaun Womack, and this almost started another fight because not only did he win both reps, both times he got Deshaun Womack on the ground and then finished by basically laying out on Deshaun Womack. And that nearly caused a fight again with the lineman. My big takeaway is Zalance Hurd clearly belongs. Like, if he had to play for you today, he could play for you today. The other takeaway is Deshaun Womack has a ways to go. Maybe they find a role for him, but as the big end right now, like in the Savion Jones, Ali Gay role, he is too light. Every drill we've seen where he's gone up against these SEC offensive linemen, he's just physically overwhelmed by much bigger guys when they get into his pads. They've got Deshaun Womack listed at 6'5", 260. I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just because he's going against much larger men that he's not used to going against. But that's going to be something worth watching in the days and weeks. I know there's a lot of hype about Womack, and justifiably so. He's a young guy, was a 5-star, and everybody's high on him. But what they're asking him to do right now, he's got a ways to go to catch up to what we've seen from a guy like Savion Jones. So something worth keeping an eye on there at the end. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.